Says introduction.
Okay, go ahead and call the meeting to order.
You betcha, that came in.
I just didn't want you to repeat
That
it.
came in whole.
Well, okay, I call the meeting to order. Introductions, most of us know each other. Would you introduce your crew?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really happy to adults. So these are 2021 AIS interns. So this is Seth Hackworth. He's going to be a senior at Northland College this year. And then Justine Litherland, she just graduated from Northland College. So super happy to have them on board. They've done just a phenomenal job. And this is their first LCC meeting. So welcome.
So in other words, you're gonna have a little bit of competition for your job now?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, welcome. Good, excellent. Everybody else knows everybody here, so, and he knows us, so that's. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Carol makes motion.
I'll second it.
Jerry seconds. Any additions or corrections? Anybody got any comments on them? If not, all in favor? All right. Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. Public comments, 3 minutes. Anybody?
Chairperson, I think we should adopt the agenda also, just for a formality.
Well, it's not on here.
Well, I still think you should probably do that for a
No,
formality.
that's kind of something new that we've been doing, I don't know, since the last, since we hired the last administrator, you know?
Should I have that on the agenda?
All right,
Adoption agenda should be.
we'll have it your way.
Call work.
Okay.
Coming right from Minnesota.
I move to adopt the agenda.
Jerry moves to adopt the agenda.
I'll second it.
John seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion opposed, motion carried. Now public comments. Anybody on the horn that wants to do a public comment? If not, we'll go into number 5, which is wildlife damage coordinator retirement update.
All right. So I want to say congratulations to Dave. Dave is retiring,
You don't fish.
and it's not against his will. It's by his choice. So we're happy for him. Dave's been working for Ashland County. Anybody have a guess? For how long?
16 years.
I saw the paper 18.
18.
Someone reads their minutes. Perfect, in their packet. Good job, Jerry. Dave has been with us for 18 years, so we want to thank him for his service. He's serviced Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, and Iron County, providing wildlife damage. And so I want to say thank you, Dave, and we're going to have a luncheon for him after the meeting over at Prentice Park to show our appreciation. So I just wanted to give the opportunity if anybody wanted to say anything, or Dave, if you want to share a story or anything like that, we'll open it up to some discussion.
Well, he's thinking about that. I'll just make a little comment. I knew Dave all my life. We grew up together, and he's an awesome guy, and he did it. He brought a lot to this committee and to the community and so on. And he did a real job and worked good with the farmers and stuff and the wildlife abatement. And I'm glad that he's going out and he's still healthy, and he's not a young man anymore, but he's done well. So I think we should really be proud of him, that what he's done for us.
This is Charlie. I'd like to say a few words if I can, when I can.
Charlie.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I just want to say that I thought Dave was a perfect representative, not just for land conservation, but for the public in general. He was always thoughtful, soft-spoken. You couldn't ruffle him, and I really appreciated that, and I still do, and we're going to miss him. I know I will. Talk about steady, hard work. I don't know, Dave, you got some big shoes to fill there, and I hope whoever replaces you, you can give them a little primer in the personality needed for this kind of work, because you certainly have it, and I certainly appreciate it. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments.
Not to push you out the door, but do we have a replacement?
No, we'll talk about that.
That's on the agenda.
Oh,
on the
I didn't get
agenda.
the agenda, so that's fine.
He's sharing.
Well, Dave has got a unique personality, and I'm just wondering who's gonna take that over in that office. They're probably gonna have to have Gary come over once in a while with his sense of humor.
Yeah.
What, you're gonna, you know, Mary Jo, you're gonna have to have the screen on or something. You're gonna have something to motivate the people in that office now. So I think Dave done kind of that, as well as answering the phone. Secretary, you always knew you could get Dave as a secretary, you know.
Yeah, I've been with Dave for all 18 years, and I'm gonna miss the gas updates for sure. I think I'm gonna miss that the most.
What about weather?
Yeah, don't forget the hourly weather reports too. I'll miss that.
Well, you know how busy he was being secretary and doing everything else. He even had to hire a plane to do the flyovers in the fall because he didn't have time to go out and do that.
Yeah, Dave worked smarter, not harder. You gotta give him credit there.
Yeah, there you go. You're gonna donate the chair to him because he's probably the only one that fits it.
The chair is showing a lot of wear right now the last year.
The chair is actually going with him.
Now, are you talking about the chair or you?
The chair is showing a lot of wear.
Yeah, well, that's my point. I never seen the chair have any wear to it, but the one who sits in it, I see a lot of wear. Anyway, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, David. Best of luck in your retirement. I'm gonna miss you. Even though Don didn't always see eye to eye.
If you need any pointers, I can give them to you, because I teach retirement. He's probably in the office is maybe, I don't think this happened, but I had an elderly couple married for many years, you know, and he says to me one day, he said, wife and I never argued. I go, really? He said, we've had a lot of loud discussions, but we never argued.
That would be Dave and Mike over there.
That's my point.
Actually, there have been a few times I have to break up discussion because it got a little heated.
Well, I've been on the board almost 30 years, and when this program came in, we had some rough roads, you know, and Dave, a lot of you has heard me tell the story about it, you know, and when Dave quit milking cows, I knew he'd be the perfect fit for this, you know, and took a few years to get him in there, but we finally got him in there, and I think it's going to be hard to replace him in his knowledge of farming and everything else. That don't mean we can't find somebody that knows how to, you know, the program, but we're going to change the script of that position. So we'll work on it. We got a few months. Anything else? And you can come out and have a hot dog and we can BS about it a little bit too.
Well, I wanted to thank him also for yesterday, Dave. Credit Scott over there coming up with the idea of the old. He had that camera just to go on, but Dave gave a really nice presentation on the no-till. I wouldn't even know which end of it to hook up, and Dave went into it from top to bottom, and we got it all recorded. Scott got it all recorded. We got one 53-minute video of Dave explaining the no-till and took some National Geographic angles in there. So it's gonna be good. And he went through it with a fine-tooth comb. I think even I could run it now. What do you think, Dave?
Probably could.
So now, does he own that or do we own that?
We own
That, okay, so we can put it in families, funniest videos.
Yeah.
You might be able to finance the department with that, you know?
We'll make 10 grand out of that.
Okay, if nothing else, let's go to number 6. Approval of the 2022 wildlife damage budget. Do we have that with us?
Well, you should have that in your packet, a tentative one. There has been some changes since we printed that out on there. I did get some figures from Wildlife Services and whatnot for 2022 Fairway location. So the changes will be very small. What's shown in the packet that like just not, it should be in there, right, Mary Jo?
Yes. You have your wildlife damage budget under item number 6. And it is what you see up on the screen. It's a black and white sheet with numbers on the bottom in red. I have an extra packet, John, if you want that.
Yeah, the changes on there, we had the change, we dropped, lowered the bear trapping contract. I got the numbers in yesterday from Wildlife Services. We lowered the numbers on that. And I'm not sure if we made too many other changes, but total Ashland County share for the 2022 is gonna be, I think it's $21,647, reflecting the changes that we made. Same number. Where I suppose I should explain, there'll be just 3 counties for 2022 projection instead of 4. Douglas County is going to continue on with Wildlife Services for the 2022 year. So we dropped out of them. And Ashland County and Iron County are going to do a 30% split, and Bayfield County 40% for the total wildlife damage program.
They're going to continue on their south then from here on, or are we going to?
Douglas was going to stick for 2022 with Wildlife Services. Now, it hasn't been approved by either Bayfield or Iron County, whatever their committees decide. But this is tentatively like they're going to be with going back to with Ashland for the part-time position. And that's got to go before their committees and to see what they will say. And we did figure out, Mary Jo was figuring out a 38% position along with the farm coordinator or whatever we're going to call it. The other part takes the bulk of the new person after the start of the year.
So in agenda item number 9, we're going to be talking about a grant that we wrote to hire an ag technician. And that position will be combined with wildlife damage. So we're going to talk a little bit more about it at that point, but like what Dave is talking about here, the first number on your budget is the salary line, and that's a little bit lower than the past because we're reducing it from 100% full-time down to about 40% work would be in wildlife damage, and then the rest of that person's job would be the agricultural technician. And we'll describe that more when we get to that agenda item. And then in addition, Douglas County has pulled off of the wildlife damage coordinator. So they are contracting directly with Wildlife Services with the federal program themselves.
Just the rest of this year, or are they going to continue to do that?
This year and next year, they are doing that, and then they're going to decide after that. But Bayfield and Iron County are committed to sticking together with us. And they, like Dave said, they haven't approved that at their committee yet, But at the last committee meeting they had, they said they would go with whatever Ashland decides.
No, which ones are that? Was that Bayfield County?
And Iron, yes.
Because when I talked to Ben, Ben says it's gonna leave it up to the committee, so he was leaving it open to them to make a change if they want to. But yeah, tentatively, they're projected to stay with this position. And then by the end of the year, if they pass that legislation at the state level, that could eliminate this position with the counties. You know, that was the proposal one, but it hasn't.
To get rid of that position with the counties totally.
Yes, and have wildlife services take care of everything in all the counties. Now, that may not ever take place this year. It could, but you can't say.
As of right now,
They'll
it
get
ain't.
to it and pass it, you know, but they're thinking about it very strong. So that could change next year even.
In 2019, there was a bill proposed to end wildlife damage coordinators at the county level and just have it be run through the wildlife services program. And then that bill came before the legislature last year, but before it was voted on, COVID happened. So then it never actually got voted on. And now this year, there's been some disagreements on that bill. And so it has not been brought back before the legislature for a vote. So it's kind of just stalled at this point, and there's no one that is bringing it forward or pushing it in support of it.
Well, and you know, we changed governors a few years ago, and every governor puts in their own department heads, and you just don't know where those department heads come from and what they're thinking all the time. And they can change a lot of the programs around too, you know, so whatever happens, happens, but it's in the wind.
Yeah, all these programs have to be changed at the legislation level because it's a state statute this program runs under. So they have to change the statutes to make the changes, just like some of the other parts of the program, they have to pass changes to the statutes and whatnot. So that's what will have to take place. And that's all on the legislators, not department heads or anything. Yeah, and the changes on here, the percentage for Ashland County, like I said, was 21,647. Now this year, 2021 budget was $30,465 total. A bigger change on the administrative salaries part. There will be health insurance added to this and computer expense to provide a technician with a computer. So there are some big additions, so that's why this budget number is closer. I was never taking health insurance, getting it through my wife at the hospital. So that's you know, a couple $1,000 added, extra added cost to the wildlife program that didn't happen before. So there, it would have been quite a bit less if they're running still the same amounts. So bear relocation fees is less because we didn't trap any bear last year in Ashland County, so that drops the 5-year average down. And so that's down to $2,550, while it used to be $4,100 last year. So them are some of the changes on there. Deer processing, we dropped that $1,000 because we're not using that total amount. That's a figure alone. That's not money we get. We are allowed that many dollars on the budget without having to ask for an amendment to judge that up. But we only go through about $600 or $700 a year on the deer processing. And this will be only for Ashland County. Before I was always doing the same for Douglas County. So I won't be handling Douglas this past, or this next year, I wouldn't anyway, but the person would, for Douglas is no longer gonna happen for next year, but Ashland County is the only one right now with the deer donation program. So see, everything else is adjusted accordingly for training, gas vehicle. We just changing the vehicle for the program in the department. So we will have a less cost on mileage and whatnot. So if anybody got any other questions, I do have, well, the package should show all these other figures. Anybody wants to ask about anything? I think our rent, the rent is going up, but not the percentage for the wildlife damage program, because we're not at 100% of our position. We're down to approximately 38%, so there will be a less of a share for rent this coming year.
Questions? John, you had a question?
Yeah, what's the all involved with the abatement materials?
That is an allowable amount. If we have any fencing requests, permanent fencing, temporary fencing, also lately we've been getting into some silage bag covers for eliminating deer damage or bear damage or something. Those are, we classify as abatements, and this is a figure that we've got this kind of money to work with. Now, it's not that we get this money, but we can go up to 7,000 here for the different, like temporary fencing and abatement materials. We got 7,000 to work with there, and then if we ever go over that with requests, then we have to come to the committee and ask for a budget amendment to allow more money to be spent from the department. It doesn't cost us anything. This is all refundable by the DNR. So that's an amount that I figure will be useful, that we can cover any of these potential projects for the farmers.
Thank you.
Does it cover silage bags for wolf damage?
Wolf damage?
The only ones that wildlife damage program is huntable species. Well, wolves are huntable, but they're not in the wildlife damage program. They're handled separately by the DNR. So that wouldn't cover that. You'd have to go through the DNR.
Get a permit. They're gonna shoot 100 of them this year.
20.
And one quick comment, John, on your question. Dave, when a farmer files a claim for damage, are they required to try to implement abatement practices first?
Yes, they have to do an abatement practice in order to be eligible for any claim damages. They have to take a deer shooting permit if it's deer damage. Bear, you have to trap bear first. For any bear damage claims, you have to do an abatement for any type of damage in order to be eligible to get damage claim payments at the end of the year.
And John, years ago, the orchards up in Bayfield were having a lot of problems with deer. So Dave worked with some of the orchard growers to fence the orchard and also to give deer kill tags before they would be eligible to claim reimbursement from damage. So that's why you see those expenses listed in the abatement. That provides for us to implement tools to try to prevent future damage from happening.
And all of these participants have to be commercial agricultural producers. It's not for the hobby farmer or anything, but if you're producing produce for a truck garden and if you have well over $2,000 of sales on some of them, then you can qualify. So we don't handle anything for the average garden person. small claims like you have to be a commercial agricultural producer in order to qualify for the wildlife damage program, abatements and claims and everything.
Going back to the bear trapping, you mentioned something with the last meeting we talked about, you had cameras, is that the cameras on the,
No, on the bear traps, we probably were talking about trap monitors on there that trigger dropping the door, and then they'll send the signal when the door gets dropped.
Okay. Is that not in place yet then?
Yeah, they're working on that right now. They've always had a handful of those traps available up here, and now they're supposed to get like 30 or 40 of them. So most every one will be having a monitor on it. And quite a few of those in place right now. It's a couple months behind on their getting these traps fitted and whatnot with materials that they had to rebuild them and everything. So they're working on that right now, and I think they got half of them at least done. So that this fall they'll be able to use those, and it'll really help out the farmers that they don't have to be checking every day. They'll only have to check when that monitor goes off. They have to check the trap then to see what's in it, or if it needs to be reset. It'll save them a lot of time.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, it's an action item. We need a motion and a second to approve.
I'll motion to approve the wildlife budget.
Carol makes motion to approve.
Second.
Gary seconds it. Any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor? All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Let's go to 7 with the approval of the 22 department budget.
All right, land conservation budget. You have a long sheet in your packet that you might want to pull out and open it all the way up. So if you look down towards the bottom third for the red line that goes all the way across, that lists the total expenses that we've had over the years dating back to 2018. And just, overall, the budget has increased substantially due to a number of factors. One of the first factors I want to let you know about is that in 2019, there was a bill proposed to increase land conservation staff funding at the state level. And a number of counties traveled around the state to the hearings that were held on that. And we provided feedback and comments. And then last year in 2020, that bill was proposed and it was voted on by either the Assembly or the Senate, and it passed. But then before it went to the other house, COVID happened. So they never voted on it. But it was brought back this year and it was passed after many, many years of trying to increase funding across the state. And that will increase our budget by about $24,000 next year for staff. So that was a good success for conservation departments. We did not receive the exact amount that we were asking for, but we did get some substantial funding. So that helped increase our budget. That would be reflected down in the bottom in the revenues. Under the third revenue line down listed as the DATCP staffing grant, and that's highlighted in green over on the right. So that reflects our lobbying efforts in 2019. Another increase to our budget was that we received the Wisconsin DNR grant for the Marengo River stream flow gauge. So we've talked about that several times at our meetings. That was a $50,000 grant that we were awarded this year. Most of the expenses of that, $37,500, will actually come out in next year's budget. So that grant is listed in the fourth line of the revenue, and it's part of our Wisconsin DNR Act 157. It's combined with some other grants in there. And then another substantial increase is we received agreement with the Department of the Army Corps of Engineers. We've been working on this agreement for almost a year. September will be a year. And this will be to design a new road crossing and culvert on Berwiger Road in the town of White River, and wetland restoration on the north side of Marengo River Road. And these projects will help us assist in our natural flood management work. So that funding from the Department of Army is a $120,000 agreement, of which we will receive 75% of that, or $90,000. And that funding is listed in revenues, also under the fourth line down, the revenue line listed as Wisconsin DNR Act 157 and FEMA. And then in addition, the other increase is that we received a National Association of Conservation Districts grant for technical assistance. And this is the grant that we just wrote this summer to try and hire an agricultural technician that would implement nutrient management plans and help us increase our farmland preservation program in Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, and Iron counties. And we received that grant. That will bring $60,411 to the county. And that is listed under the sixth line down under revenues. Actually, no, it's listed way down at the bottom, the second from the bottom, as NACD, National Association of Conservation Districts grant. That's at $60,411. So we'll be using that to hire an agricultural technician. So there's a lot of your increases. And then basically since 2018, I've been working to try to maximize grants to increase revenue for the county. So if you look across that red bar of total expenses, we've increased our budget in 2018 from about $343,000 to, for next year, $790,750. It's an increase of over $437,000. We're increasing the budget of about 44%. And the important thing to note here is that for every dollar of county money that we're spending, we're bringing in right now $9 in outside sources of funding. So that's a huge asset to Ashland County. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and just go down through the 2022 budget request, which is on the far right column of your spreadsheet. We're going to start right at the top. And some of the areas I'm going to focus mostly on the areas that are highlighted in green. So up at the top, our request for next year for salaries is $150,044. Now this is an increase from last year. We will no longer have our aquatic invasive species coordinator grant next year. So that staffing position is now being combined in our regular land conservation budget. We have funding to absorb that and keep that as a full-time position. And that was a position that we approved at our last meeting as the land and water conservation specialist. So there would be 3 staffing positions in there. In addition, I am asking for a wage increase for myself for next year. What I've done is I've done a comparison of all of the average wages for land conservationists in the northern 10 counties. The average wage in the northern 10 counties, Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, Iron, Price, Sawyer, Taylor, Washburn, and Rusk counties. The average wage is at $57,142. My position here in Ashland County makes $50,700. So what I'm asking for is an increase for the average wage, and that would also be reflected in there. The next highlight down would be salaries at part-time. So that's an increase from last year. That includes a Northland College work-study position. So we are working with Northland to create a permanent work-study professional opportunity with the college. That's going to be our next budget item, or I'm sorry, agenda item. So I'll discuss that in detail, but that would be included in that line. We also would have money included in there for our interns for next summer. And typically those intern positions are paid for through our aquatic invasive species budget, which once again, we are no longer having that grant next year. That grant is ending. So that will be absorbed in our land conservation budget. Everything else on the budget line there is the same as last year. Going down to capital outlay, the next highlighted green, that's a $20,000 request, and that would be to purchase a boat that would be used for researching. Right now, we rent a boat every year. We've been doing this for 3 years, and that was part of our aquatic invasive species grant. So we currently conduct research on 5 or 6 inland lakes every year. We plan to continue that work. And with the grant that we're receiving from the Army, the Department of Army, we're looking for ways to spend out some of that money that we're receiving. And this would be an opportunity to do so. So we plan to purchase a boat in 2022. The next line down that's highlighted green is a Wisconsin DNR Act 157. So that would be the funding that we received from the Wisconsin state legislators to implement our flood demonstration project in the Marengo River watershed. There's a total of $150,000 in that line that would come from Act 157. We also have our expenses in that line for our Wisconsin DNR stream gauge, and then our $90,000 in expenses for the Berwiger Road culvert and the wetland restoration from the Department of Army. So those 3 sources of funding would show up as an expense in that line. There's $277,500. Our no-till program will stay about the same. Wildlife damage is dropping. So as Dave described, we no longer will have Douglas County as part of our wildlife damage program. And we are reducing that program from a full-time position to a 38% position. That position then will be combined with the next highlighted green box down, which is our NACD Ag Tech. So that's the National Association of Conservation Districts grant. That grant will be bringing in $60,411, and that will provide for staffing and benefits of that combined Ag Tech and wildlife damage position. And it would pay for use of a vehicle, it would pay for computer expenses, supplies related to that program. So then in the red column, our total expenses, they have actually changed a little bit from what you see on your sheet because of the changes that we made in the wildlife damage program. So the total expenses next year would be $790,745. Our revenues down at the bottom, the wildlife damage program revenue and the wildlife damage program county reimbursement have also changed a little bit from what's on your sheet based on the numbers we received from the state. So the wildlife damage program 2022 planned revenue would be $21,647, as Dave reported. The next line down for wildlife damage program county reimbursement, this would be the reimbursement to Ashland County. The revenue would be $25,894. And one thing we didn't mention about wildlife damage, that program is 100% reimbursed from the state. So whatever our actual expenditures are, those will be 100% reimbursed. The next revenue line down is highlighted green. That's our DATCAP staffing grant. So once again, that reflects our increased lobbying efforts and resolution efforts that we made in 2019. So the planned revenue there will be $133,875. And that includes the first position with Ashland County, or the most expensive position with Ashland County, is always 100% reimbursed from DATCAP. And then our second position right now is getting reimbursed at about 68%. And the goal is to have it reimbursed at 70% from the state. So we've had a little bit of an increase from what it previously was. The next line down for revenue is our Wisconsin DNR Act 157 and FEMA funding. That's at $323,510 for next year. Our DATCAP cost share, that's our cost sharing program that we work with landowners on conservation practices. So our landowners are reimbursed at least 70% of the cost of the conservation practice that they install with us. And that's the primary role that Mike works on through our department. Our funding for next year is at $49,500. Nutrient management and farmland preservation program for next year, we've increased that. So we have about 30,000 that's available for farmers to write new nutrient management plans. And then we have an additional 25,000 in there that we are trying to increase participation in farmland preservation. So for 1 year, we are able to offer a farmer a $2,000 incentive to develop a farmland preservation agreement in Ashland County. And this would be a 15-year agreement that they would agree to maintain their land in farmland preservation. And they would meet the state Natural Resource 151 standards. And then along with farmland preservation, they are eligible for tax incentives. Our vehicle rental, that increased a tiny bit. Basically, the wildlife damage program coordinator and the agricultural technician would be having use of a vehicle, and those programs would bring some revenue back in to help pay for maintenance of those uses. Tree and shrub program, that stayed about the same. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service partners, we are going to be using up our 2 large grants that we currently have with them this year. And Fish and Wildlife has allocated $10,000 to us next year for a new project. We have not identified yet where that project will be. The no-till program, that's use of our no-till planter for farmers across the region. The next line down is the National Association of Conservation Districts grant that we talked about, $60,411. That will be for a new agricultural technician. And then our Wisconsin DNR Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator grant is going away next year. And the DNR has switched to contracting across the state with counties. So we will be required to implement a set of requirements through the DNR under aquatic invasive species education and prevention efforts. And then that would be our allocation that we'll be signing a contract with the state. The disadvantage of losing these types of grants are that counties will not be eligible for large amounts of funding as we have been in the past. But the advantage is that these will be non-competitive contracts. So it will be easier for us to budget and know what we can expect to get from year to year versus competitive grants. So the total revenue there expected is $718,665. So that's a little bit different than what's on your sheet. $718,665. And that reflects the changes in the wildlife damage program. All right, discussion. Yes.
I have two questions. First one is, thank you for doing such a great job. And the second one, how do you feel overall with the whole thing?
It's a lot of work.
But you feel comfortable with everything?
Oh, yes.
You do?
So the question was, how do I feel with the overall budget? The overall budget is overwhelming. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of opportunities coming to Ashland County right now for flood demo work, flood mitigation, working in the Marengo. And I feel it's very important to try to implement those opportunities and take advantage of those opportunities if we can. So I've tried to figure out ways to make adjustments in the department and to take on the work that is being offered to us so that we can capture those revenues for the county. Those revenues are going back to landowners, they're going back to contractors in the county that are doing this work. And right now we're able to manage it. There are a couple other grants out there that we've been asked to apply for. At this point, I don't feel that we can take on additional grants and still do the quality level of work that I expect to come out of our department. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on Mike and I in the next year to implement these flood projects. We've talked about it a lot and want to do a very good job on that. So we likely will not be taking on any more grants in the next year or two. And then after we get some of this demonstration and this flood work done, I hope to be able to taper off a little bit on the amount of work we're doing, especially because I realize in 2023, Mike is planning to retire. And we are going to have a huge, huge role to fill when we have to replace that technician position. So I think the important thing to know is that the way our department functions is that we're able to manage this work right now, and we're trying to maximize and take advantage of all the opportunities that are coming our way. And I feel that we can do a very good job with what we're doing. But I think it's also important to note that these have been substantial increases in the last 3 years. Far, far above what our department has ever been able to do.
Thank you.
Just a simple question of, with the new $1 trillion environmental package that is being talked about, is it being 6 months into this administration, have you seen any big, is there money going to come down the pipe to us, or is it all going to go to China?
That's a great question. Honestly, I don't know.
And that's good. That's okay. I accept that. I just that they're talking about all this. Yeah. So there are statutes, there are things in Congress and the Senate that are talking about all for environmental. Well, you know, you would think some of this money would come down to the local, but yeah, but within a year, maybe by next year, we'll see a little bigger picture of that. Okay.
Yeah, there hasn't been any discussion that I'm aware of right now. Now, one place that would be discussed would be at our state land conservation, county conservation meetings. And we have not met in person for 1.5 years. So there is supposed to be a meeting coming up in October, and typically state and federal incentive types of programs and funding programs do get discussed. It's possible that it may be discussed there, but I have not seen anything in writing or any discussions at this point about how that may or may not affect Wisconsin and then counties.
One of the other things are the conservation wages we see here. And we've crossed that path more than once. Now, with a new administrator coming in, I think you and I need to sit down and talk about that, because when we hired our last conservationist, we could have plugged in any number we wanted. Milwaukee County gets $100,000. I don't even know if they got a conservationist, but the state DATCP says whatever you offer, they'll pay 100% of. And that discussion was pretty intense at that time, because we could have charged $60,000. The administrator at that time says, we want the department heads to be real close to equal. And that's what kept that down there. So I know when our conservationists went to Bayfield County, that wages had jumped $10,000 because their department heads were making $10,000 more than our department heads.
Sure.
So, you know, I see the numbers there, and yeah, the state will give us whatever we ask for, but I think we need to talk to the administrator on that.
Yeah, and I have talked to Clark about this. We do not know, neither he nor I knows in Ashland County what the spread of director level salaries are, what the numbers are. It's something that we would have to look at. But I cannot say if that is comparable with what all of the directors make. The other thing to consider is that some of our department heads have a very small budget. They might manage 100 or 150,000, and maybe they have one staff. And other departments manage a multi-million-dollar budget, like our sheriff department or our health and human services. And they may have 30 to 60 staff. So I don't know that Ashland County would ever have comparable wages of directors all the way across the board based on what their roles and responsibilities are.
I'm just kind of letting you know, and everybody, that why our wage scale is that low. It's mostly because of all the department heads looking at where they are, and they're real close. We don't have one way up here and one way down here, you know, and that was the rationale when we talked about putting the last conservationist in place. So we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, one of the things is, I'm gonna make a recommendation to the county is you need to pay people comparably to their responsibilities. Otherwise, you expose yourself from a risk standpoint to basically have discriminatory pay standards. And so in this case, for maybe $25,000 or $30,000, I would recommend the county hiring either Baker Tilly or Carlson Dietwin Management. They basically would come in and rate all the job descriptions with points. And then each point would be worth so many dollars. And then basically, you know, Mary Jo's position, you know, might be at 700 points. And if somebody else is at 800 points, they're going to earn more. If somebody earns 600 points, they're going to earn less. The point being is you can't pick out one person because they're a rock star. And I'll be the first one to admit, Mary Jo is a rock star really doing what she does. But the question is, because she can generate money, but let's say the jail administrator doesn't have the opportunity to make grants, doesn't have the opportunity to bring in money, should she be held back because she can't do that? You should pay people comparably for their responsibility, the risk to the county, the oversight, the operations that they do. And that's gonna take somebody that is a lot more experienced at doing this. I've been through this experience twice. And it's a long drawn out process. The first step is to get all your job descriptions to look the same. So then they rate them and then they compare them. And what you probably will find out is that Ashland County is most likely paying everybody less than everybody else. But as long as they're relatively paid less across the board, you're safe. But if all of a sudden you start picking people out and saying, well, because we're going to pay this person this much, you risk having an inequitable charge levied against you from fellow staff members. So that would be my recommendation for the county for to put in the budget for 2023 with their new administrator.
Yeah, this is Supervisor Jennings. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just got to say, I understand the rationale for keeping directors, you know, at the same level and at some kind of comparable level. But, you know, I also got to say too, that if you look at, you know, market wise, you know, your different professions don't always end up with the same wages, right? You graduate with your IT degree these days, you know, you're sitting at $70,000 just out of your bachelor's degree, right? You graduate with your degree in education, you might be looking at 40,000 or 30 at best, right? And so that's one thing you got to keep in mind is you can't keep that in your head that everybody should be making, you know, the same exact comparable thing, right? Because just down the road in Duluth, they'll be hiring the same kind of position for a lot more than what we can pay. And so, you know, I'm also a big fan of, you know, trying to develop some kind of incentive-based evaluation. I don't know what we do currently, but, you know, when somebody is bringing in extra revenue and really stepping up, I mean, to me, that means we got to figure out ways to keep them. And so, I mean, all she's asking for is to be paid what the average wage is. I mean, crying out loud, I would, my opinion is to give her a little bit extra than the average. And maybe that means what Clark says, we have to assess these other positions. But I can guarantee you, if you did a cost assessment of what it costs the county when we lose somebody, right? The money that it costs to hire an agency to go and find, you know, candidates that want to work up here, to the money lost or revenues lost when somebody vacates a position. I mean, I would guarantee you there it'd be a big waste of time. So that's just my thoughts on it.
One other thing to consider is the way that we receive our DATCP staffing money is that we make our application based on our previous year's expense. So we make our next year's application based on what we spent last year. So if the county decided in 2023 that they're gonna do this study and possibly I would get a raise then, the county would have to pay out that money. And then the next year we would show on our application what we spent and we can get reimbursed then the next year. But the county will pay out that money out of their pocket. And going into 2022, we have this grant with the Department of Army that's going to generate $90,000 in revenue for these flood projects that Mike and I are going to be working on in-house. So we are not going to contract out an engineer service company. That $90,000 will stay with the county. And this would give us an opportunity, if I had a wage increase, that the county would not, it would not cost the county any additional money out of pocket. And then when I apply for my DATCP grant in 2023, we will show that we had this expense related to salary and we'll be able to get reimbursed 100% in the future. It's very confusing, but basically your DATCP application, your DATCP staffing for your future year is based on your previous expenditures. So if we're ever going to give a wage increase, at some point we're going to have to pay that out, and then the next year is when we would be eligible to recapture reimbursement. And we typically do not have grants coming in that have lots of excess revenue in them. It happens to be that it's happening in 2022. And I agree with Clark, you know, equity is important. I also agree with Dylan. Not everybody is ever going to make the same wages. And we don't know if the county would ever do an assessment like that. We can recommend it, but we don't know if that would happen. And we don't know how long something like that would take. So that's all I'll say there.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I got a little bit of
If I could have a chance at some time.
Yeah, okay, Charlie.
Charlie.
Go ahead.
Oh, I don't mind waiting with someone else in line.
Jerry would also like to speak.
Okay, well, I'll wait. I don't mind.
Okay, Jerry.
Okay. When we're talking about hiring an agriculture technician, and part of that is to take up Dave's job.
Correct. It would be a shared position where they would do 40% of their work would be wildlife damage, and then 60% would be writing nutrient management plans, farmland preservation programs, and also helping to promote Gary's programs.
Well, that's one thing
Federal.
where I'm going with this question. The nutrient management plan, in my understanding, is getting quite complex. And hopefully this person will be, and Carol, maybe you can add to this, that it's getting so complex for the farmers that they're gonna need some assistance in it. Does that make sense, Carol, what I'm saying?
Well,
About the nutrient,
I won't disagree that it's complex, because it is, but when somebody takes these programs on and they get the education in that, it comes a lot simpler. Now, I watched him show me nutrient management. He's got his paddocks, it's all on the computer, there it is, his whole farm is on the computer. And cows have a standard, you know, you got a 500-pound animal, 1,000 and 1,500. They got a standard number of how many pounds of waste they have per day, per week, per month. You know, those are just numbers that you punch in. And I watched him for 10 minutes. It was just fun. He's just good at it. I mean, he got every cow and how many were here this day, but you know, your big farms, they got 200 cows, you know.
We understand that, George, but I'm talking about the nutrient requirements and the amount available on the land and per acre, and what portion of the land is tested that is lacking in potash, for instance, or whatever. It gets to be pretty complicated for these guys that got like George said, the 300 cows or something, and they're tilling or planting corn and soybeans and alfalfa on 500 acres or 1,000.
So
it gets quite complex for them to do that properly, to comply with all the proper things in the nutrient management.
Some of our farmers work directly with a certified crop assistant or advisor.
With their fertilizer people and that, yeah.
Yep. And that's what Carol and Morgan do. And we have a couple other farmers that do that. And those are specialists that this is what they do all the time. So in that sense, it's not complex because you're working with someone that's very skilled. Now we have other farmers that are smaller and they are, they work with their SNAP Plus program quite a bit, so they understand it. Now for me, I get our farmers into our office once a year. The program has been updated. I'm not familiar with it. I'm only running it once a year. For me, it's complicated. So that's why we want to hire someone that this is their job. They become efficient. They can answer questions easily with farmers. They can help farmers figure out their best use of manure and reduce their fertilizer costs.
That's what I was hoping.
To answer your question, you know, it's complex depending on what your perspective is. But if you have a person that is their job and that's what they're skilled in, it would not be complex for them. They would be specialized in that.
Well, yeah, and you know, on what you're saying though, you know, these guys have to take a sample of their 5 acres every 5 years. So, you know, you can see that on, you know, it tells you pretty quick if you're short of lime or whatever you are, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then Charlie was waiting.
Any other questions or comments? If not, it's an action item. We need to.
Hey, George,
Charlie, aren't you sleeping?
you forgot about me, George. I'll try to take less than 3 days. Thank you. First off, I want to say I concur entirely with Dylan's assessment of this situation. And especially, you know, I value all the other departments, but department heads are not equal. There's varying degrees of education that come with the capability to serve as a department head in the various different departments. Some of them require more education, some require less, some require much more experience, some less. Those have to be taken into consideration. And this department here, yeah? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this department is going to be of the utmost importance. It is right now. I think we need to do more than we're doing, but we're going to have to transition from the status quo to this new climate emergency that's happening, and the climate refugees are going to be rolling in here within a year or two. Come September, we don't know how much food we're going to have because the Central Valley in California is down to about 10% production. I think we've got a lot of new problems that are going to be, people want this department to tackle in the not too distant future. And I really think we need someone skilled like Mary Jo here. And I would like to add that in this budget, she's dropped, looks like to me like the county levy is down $4,000, but the income that this department has brought in this year is going to be upwards of $170,000 or $164,000 that's going to be circling around this community that wasn't last year. So that's a return on investment of, well, $164,000. Who does that? Mary Jo does. So I would like to say that also Mary Jo came to this department with huge qualifications. She's been doing this job for years. She was a county conservationist, I believe, before she even came here. So she was completely experienced, and I don't know anyone who charges harder than she does. And I think she should be paid more than the average, but certainly at least the average. And I'll be grateful, and I will say, please stick around, Mary Jo. We need you, and the state's going to need you shortly. So with that, I would say this budget is amazing and gives us extra things. It doesn't lose anything. And Mary Jo wants an extra $7,000 to get her caught up. I fully support it. And I will stand on desks to make my point anywhere I need to. I think there's, if her raise can't be justified, nobody's can. So I would encourage and please everyone support this budget. We're in a good spot, and later we need to talk about some new duties for this department, because the world is in a bad place right now, and this is a department that's going to be dealing with a lot of the ramifications. So thank you.
So with that, do you want to make a motion that we pass the budget?
I will make that motion. Thank you.
Second.
Charlie made motion, John
Dylan seconded.
seconded it. Any other discussions, comments? If none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Number 8, approval of Northland College work study position. Who's going to take care of that? You're going to take care of that, or are you going to let Scott talk?
No, I'm going to take care of it.
Let him talk.
So in your packet, you see a job description. Yep, you have a letter there. And basically, we are trying to work with Northland to provide a professional work study position during the academic year. So our department has never offered this position in the past, and I've wanted to begin this type of partnership ever since I came here 3 years ago. The position would be both beneficial to the college and our department. It would assist Northland because they receive accreditation requirements. And one of their roles that they have to fill is providing public service positions in the county. So this would also help them in their accreditation, and then obviously it will help our department in implementing many of our programs and outreach efforts. So there is a position description there. The primary responsibilities would be taking over our annual tree and shrub sale, the tracking of that. So that's one thing that I've done over the last few years. So this student would assist Scott in that role. They also would be conducting water quality monitoring on the Marengo River. They would help with our conservation poster and speaking contest. They'll continue doing some of our clean boats, clean waters work at the landings through the fall. And during times of year that there's tournaments or ice fishing tournaments, they'll do data entry for us. They can provide assistance on surveying work this fall when we're getting ready to survey our projects that we'll design for next year, and many other duties. It would be a partnership with the college in that we would have a cost share. So we would pay part of the position and the college would pay part of the position. We do have money in our budget to begin this right away this fall. And we have signed, we have received the agreement from the college that we can sign. So what we would do is our student Seth, who's been working for us this summer, he's done an awesome job. He'll be a senior at Northland next year. And it does require that the student is a current student. So unfortunately, we can't offer the position to Justine because she's already graduated and she's gonna be heading out of here at the end of summer. But we are able to keep Seth on board and I've talked to him about it. He's excited about the opportunity, but we need to solidify a professional partnership with the college. So I'd be open to questions if anyone has anything.
Anybody got a question on it? Well, I do. She ready to take over our agricultural technician position? Well, you got people who've been in it and they've already got their feet wet and they know the agricultural end. And these are the kind of people we're really looking to put in our department. So,
Justine, what's your degree?
I double majored in biology and fisheries management.
And what's your main interest in natural resources?
Mostly fisheries.
Not ag?
No, not really.
yeah, with the agricultural technician, that's all biology.
Yeah,
you know, that would be the base of it, you know. So anyway, keep us in mind, you know.
George, can I speak for a second again?
Yeah.
On Mike's retirement, I think it is time to get somebody working side saddle with him before he goes, and a year probably isn't too much time. I know that's so I just want to throw that out there. I don't think we can find somebody to replace him, you know, with too much overlap. If we could get somebody in there right away, that would be a good idea. Thank you.
Well, like Mary Jo said more than once, it's not going to be easy to find a person with all the different qualifications put into one. So, you know, and those of us who've been around a long time, when Mike came on, he was really not a technician. He was a surveyor, and we give him time to learn it and take your time, get good at it, you know. Scott, on the other hand, when he come out of college, this was his dynamic. I mean, it was like, there it is. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm qualified for, and that's where we want him. So, just a good thought. Anyway, I need a motion to approve the Northland College work study position. All right, so Gary makes a motion.
I'll second it.
Carol seconds it. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Number 9, NACD grant update and approval of hire agricultural technician.
Okay, next item in your packet. We've talked about this a couple times already today, but we received the National Association of Conservation Districts grant that was submitted in June. And that would be to hire an agricultural technician to provide planning and technical assistance in the 4 counties. So we are offering this position. We will house the position and provide computer and office supplies and use of a vehicle, but then we are also partnering with Bayfield, Douglas, and Iron because they also lack this position. And so we're going to combine it for the first year and see how it goes and help them out as well. And then it's also going to provide wildlife damage coordination in Ashland, Bayfield, and Iron counties only. So this staff person would conduct farm visits, they would provide education, they would write plans, farmland preservation plans, and nutrient management plans to help improve water quality. And then we also are going to be reaching out to our tribal communities, to Red Cliff and Bad River, if there are farmlands to promote on-reservation farm conservation programs. This position will also help advance the programs in Gary's office, the NRCS program, specifically with EQIP, looking for farmers that may be interested in those types of programs. The grant does not require us to achieve a certain number of projects through the federal programs, but it does require us to help promote them. And then there is a draft job description. So there are a couple other counties in Wisconsin, Marathon County, that has an agricultural technician that's doing this same work. So they sent me their job description. And I used theirs as a draft, and then I also updated it with our wildlife damage duties. This person would also take over coordination of our no-till planter. So there are some job duties in there about the no-till planter. And it's going to be a brand new position. You know, I don't know exactly how it's going to go or how it's going to work out. So we're going to have to try this out for a year and see if it works to provide assistance on nutrient management and farmland preservation and wildlife damage at the same time. The way I look at it is that these 2 positions, wildlife damage and an agricultural technician, likely would be visiting some of the same farms. So I'm hoping that some of this work can become more efficient by combining it into one position. The other concern I had is that, as Dave had mentioned, there was a bill proposed to send the wildlife damage program back to the state. And I was concerned that if we tried to hire that position full-time and then we eventually lose it, I would not want to hire a person that loses a job. So by combining duties, hopefully we can keep a person on long-term and have the opportunity to provide benefits. The agricultural technician grant through the National Association of Conservation Districts is a grant that's only good for 13 months. But I've been told once you receive the grant for the first time, you are very likely to get funded in the future. And when I applied for the grant, they automatically asked if we are going to be interested in future funding. And I said yes. And Marathon County, once they received it, they've received funding every year thereafter. So I'm hoping that that will be a permanent source of funding for us to maintain this position long-term. The salary that I am proposing to start them out at would be $40,800 would be the wage, and that would be at $21 an hour. So I don't have that listed on the position description yet, but that's what I wrote the grant for. And that's what I would be expecting to list it as. Okay, do we have questions about that position or the grant at all?
Well, let's get it on the floor.
Oh, sorry.
I need a motion and a second to get this on the floor.
Charlie, move to approve.
Doreen, I'll second it.
All right, there you go. Charlie and Doreen.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now it's on the floor. Is there any other technical questions? Any other comments? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed the same? Motion carried. Number 10, Department of Army Corps of Engineer Agreement Update.
Okay. We've been working on this contract since last September. I've talked about this a couple times already today, but basically last September, we submitted a request to the Army Corps of Engineers to design a culvert replacement at Berwiger Road and a wetland restoration on the north side of the Marengo River. And this is coming out of all of the flood demonstration work that we're doing. So we received the Act 157 money from the Wisconsin legislature to implement a couple of flood demonstration projects. And we are working with, Brian Anderson on his farm. That's where we are designing the practices. That's on Berwiger Road. And we've identified additional challenges there during high periods of runoff and rain events. The road culvert is undersized. There's some damage to the wetland to the south that's causing flooding in the Marengo River. So we've identified other additional projects that are above and beyond our Act 157 funds. And that's what led to this. So at the same time that we're implementing the flood demonstration projects, we've also asked for funding to go ahead and design future work. And that's what this contract with the Department of Army would do. The agreement is for $120,000, and we have some cost sharing in there through our department, but it would generate $90,000 in revenue for us to design the road culvert and the wetland restoration for Ashland County. Once we have those two projects designed, we will actually be able to request funds to implement those projects, to construct them. And we do have a couple of different sources for those funds, but we need to have the designs in place first. So the contract, the agreement with the Department of Army is 15 pages. I didn't copy it, but I do have it available if anyone is interested in reading a federal government contract and you need something to do with your time. I have a copy of that available for you. Otherwise, it's just an update to notify you that the agreement was signed on July 21st. And so we'll be able to start expending money on that, but the majority of that money I wrapped into the 2022 budget because our design work will be mostly happening over the winter. Yes?
Who and how originally comes up with the place to take care of, like you're talking about, you know, who and how?
Yeah, that would be our department. And typically we get calls from landowners that are having major challenges on their land. Whether they have large banks on the river that are slumping and eroding, and they're losing erosion. In this case, this farmer has had massive flooding for a number of years, and it's reduced the overall land that he's able to farm. So he contacted us. We also look at historic wetland maps to see places where there were wetlands in the county and there are no longer, whether it's development or agriculture. And because those wetlands are no longer there, now we're having more runoff or flooding issues. We also have a grant right now through our emergency management department that's looking at risk hazards in Ashland County. We have a FEMA grant that for the very first time ever, this grant was awarded to assess risks and hazard sites. Where are there public infrastructure, roads, culvert hazards, where if we receive increased precipitation, these are sites that could be at risk in the county. And so that data and information will also give us the resources to seek funds to try and work on some of these sites before we have a problem. So it's a number of different ways, but it's ultimately our department, and it's either landowners coming to us, it's us looking at maps, or it's us using available information and data to assess problematic areas. And then we are the ones that would look for funds, different grant opportunities. We are working very closely with the Wisconsin Wetlands Association, Kyle Magera. He's talked at some of our meetings. He is a government liaison to different counties. He does lots and lots of work looking for grants on our behalf. And some of the grants that we've received have been their agency helping us to apply for these. And then the county is the actual applicant and the recipient. So once we know that there's problems out there, it gives us a way to start looking for funding sources that could help us fix them.
Thank you. Any questions? Any comments? If not, we'll go into 11, agency reports.
Right, that would be Gary.
Okay. My soil contact with 2.5 months into the job. So then I had to sit with the position open for 90 days. So that just passed. So now we're looking to repost the position in August. So hopefully August, September, I do have a young guy that's calling me that's interested in the position, that's more northerly located and has more interest in the region. Previous individual was struggling. The big obstacle seemed to be housing, housing costs, and trying to get himself relocated to what he was thinking he should find in the region. That is the biggest obstacle to him staying in the position. So that's that. So hopefully they'll have somebody hired in a chair before I retire.
Gary, what is the requirement? Like, do they have to have a master's degree or what?
Yeah, it depends on what level position they apply to, qualify to. You have to qualify in the position from a national review of your application. So it's going to be advertised as a 6, 7, 8 position. Normally the technician positions are 5, 6, 7, but due to the nature of this position in this location, they're making it an additional step higher, which is a more independent type of work review, and covering multiple counties up here, and possibly doing some training of other staff or staff that are new. So they carry a few more duty responsibilities as well as the logistics of the publication. That's the big reason. So if they come with no experience and hopefully they got a little bit of knowledge, either 2-year education or some technical school in ArcGIS, surveying, that type of work, they would come in potentially at 5. A 7 takes a 4-year degree, and 8 takes a 4-year degree plus experience. So, yeah. And then the position will describe exactly the type of class credits you have to carry to be qualified for the position. So you can't just take a fishery job
classes to try to come into an agricultural job classification. It was easy, I could remember you. Not picking on you. So,
She wouldn't want to work for you anyway.
So, yeah, hopefully we can find someone to apply for the position, but it was challenging the first go around to get people's applications for up here. And hopefully, I can get over this person that wants to talk to me and we can see how their qualifications go on. But once it's advertised, it's open to anybody nationwide. So it is a nationwide posting. My position, I am looking to retire in about a year. So next summer, about this time, I'll be winding down. Hopefully. That's my plan. So that'll be another big hole in the agency. So yeah, it's, when I leave, Peggy leaves in 2023. So that's going to be all the old people will all be gone. So it's going to be all new staff. And
is Diane gone already?
Diane's going to go at the end of this year. It's going to go in 2023.
And Janet?
Don't know what Janet's doing.
She's been around.
Yeah, Janet's been around.
Yeah.
But she's thinking. Wow. So yeah, that our whole agency, Farm Service, Home Department, and NRCS, all going to be new faces and young people probably in the near future. So stay tuned to that change coming. Programs. We continue to have all programs through the Farm Bill available. Continue to sign up, so it's just a matter of customers talking to us, and we start to work with them on resource plans and chase the opportunities where funding may be available. The funding is going to probably increase this year. It was down a little bit last year. We changed some of the screening questions. And that's one of the things we get challenged with is the screening questions every year change a little bit, and depending on how they change them, it knocks people's eligibility in and out. So sometimes somebody thinks they're in 1 year and reapply, and the next year they'll change the screening question, and next year they're out. And it's hard to explain to people, but it's these crazy screening rules and questionnaires that we have to answer for eligibility. They're constantly changing. So we do the best we can to be proactive and ready for people to get the funding where their opportunities are. So if anybody knows of anyone that needs some help or is looking for things to do, big problems from your flooding out or whatever else they might do. They probably want to get to talking to me before October 1st, so at least we can get an application, because that's going to be the window now for the 2025. So we're trying to get as many people through the door based on an application so that we can chase funding. And then we'll tie it to whatever program that's fine. So maybe for maybe conservation stewardship program, maybe wetland reserve, maybe some other DEMA program, and then we continue to look at the opportunities where we can partner with the land conservation department, because the finances are tight with producers, and we know that, and so we're always talking to them about trying to get additional funds to help show practices. Yeah, that's about it. Got field work this fall to do all the reviews and compliance things, get that all wrapped up. So everybody seems to be doing fine with compliance. That's never been an issue up here with the long-term rotations. But as we do see more corn and soybeans in rotations, there is the potential for people to find themselves in a compliance situation because the old plans were planned under a long-term hay term rotation, and now we're introducing soybeans or long-term more additional corn in the rotation. And the tillage and slopes if we can get them into a compliance situation. But we work with those when we find them. Doesn't mean anybody's automatically out of the program or out of assistance. It's just we find them, we work with them, and then get them back in compliance and then move forward from there. So it's not out to get anybody who'd rather help people rather than getting people's the last term. We give them chances. And just that's about it for the. Any questions, comments? Likes, dislikes? Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Any questions, comments? Thanks, Gary. Number 12, staff reports. Anybody?
We're gonna have the interns and Scott start,
You bet.
please.
Good. Yeah, I can kind of kick us off here. So you should have our EIS report in front of you there. As always, feel free to read it over and ask questions as I'm chatting here. Just a few things to kind of highlight, obviously being kind of early, almost mid-August at this point in the ballgame. Field season is in full swing and then some. It's been going really, really good, very successful field season, so that's been great. We're still doing a lot of EIS monitoring, so still doing our inland lake EIS monitoring. We typically we do about 5 or 6 inland lakes that we monitor. We have 4 completed thus far, and we'll have the other lakes wrapped up in the next couple of weeks here. We're also doing monitoring on Lake Superior as well. So as far as monitoring results go, it's been kind of an interesting year. Fortunately for our inland lake waters, we haven't found 80 invaders. So that's been a little bit of a shocker, but a good thing to say the least. So that's nice. So definitely suggest that our EIS prevention efforts are definitely kicking in and working, and always nice to see. So that's good. Lake Superior, we have found Eurasian water milfoil and curly leaf pond leaf, but that's something that has been in strong debate for a very long period of time. So really no shockers there. Let's see. And then other projects, we've been doing our AIS monitoring on rivers and streams as well. So this year we focused on the Fish Creek Sloughs. Obviously gets a lot of traffic between duck hunters, fishermen, and then also people canoeing, kayaking, going for little strolls and john boats, that kind of stuff. So it gets a lot of traffic there. So that was our target site for our Project Red monitoring. For that one, we followed Eurasian water milfoil and blue strife. Again, really no shockers there. It's been documented for a good long period of time, so really no surprises there. We're still doing our purple loosestrife biocontrol, so we've been doing that the past few years, and it seems like right next to Lake Superior, there's still pretty high amounts of purple loosestrife, as you guys have probably seen, especially along the major highways, so like Highway 2, you see a lot of loosestrife. It seems like the Galveston needles, for whatever reason, I'm not sure if it's the cold temperatures or what exactly it is, but it seems like their survival rate right in Ashland along Lake Superior, the survival rate must not be there. It seems like we're having some pretty big die-offs right along the big lake, and therefore the biocontrol really isn't kicking in as much as it should be. Our sites in like Marengo, Highbridge, Mellon, those areas, those are looking just stellar. So that's really neat to see. So I kind of suggest that maybe it's a temperature thing, maybe it's just getting way too cold along Lake Superior. It could be things like duff layers, maybe they're overwintering then, things of that nature. So yeah, so that's kind of the good news and not so good news. Inland sites are definitely looking fantastic and close to the big lake. Still got some work to do there. So let's see, as far as like education and outreach, it's been really nice getting back to in-person events. If you guys are well aware, a lot of our public outreach events switched over to more of a virtual format with all the COVID-19 stuff going on. And now this summer we have been able to do a lot more of our events in person. So things like our E-Day. We've got a couple events coming up in the next few weeks. AIS Snapshot Day, one of our big citizen monitored events coming up on August 21st. And then a couple presentations and trainings with lake associations later on this summer and then early fall. So hopefully we can still do those in person with all the Delta variant stuff kind of kicking in here now too. But it's been really refreshing and energizing to get back and do these presentations and outreach in person. So that's been great. Let's see, still working on the AIS strategic plan. I mentioned that in previous LCC meetings. So basically that's going to be the framework for invasive species management, especially related to aquatics for Ashley County. So yeah, put a lot of time in on that. We'll have that all wrapped up by this winter. We'll get that submitted. Still working with my steering committee for that. So we have a real nice diverse group of individuals, folks from the local weed co-op, Northwoods Cooperative Weed Management area. We've got representatives from the Van River Tribe, City of Ashland, Ashland County, Wisconsin DNR, a lot of property owners on some of our local inland lakes, Meter Lake and Lake Galilee. So that's we've been a tremendous asset. So just a nice group, and they've been a huge and then the last thing I'd like to say, just Seth and Justine, they've just been doing just a fantastic job. I really can't say enough about them. Wonderful people, and they just are working very, very hard, and they get the job done. Whatever the project is at hand, there's no complaints or kicking and screaming, that kind of stuff. They just get the job done, they do it right, and just a joy to be around. So thank you guys for your work, and if you have anything to chime in with, feel free.
So we did assist Scott with all the educational outreach at Great Lakes Visitor Center. We had a couple events there. Lake Superior Day with Mary Jo down at the big lake, kind of helping clean up some weeds and other plants along there. We also do Clean Boat, Clean Waters as part of an educational outreach. So you'll find us down at Prairie Park and Second Landing every weekend. Lake monitoring, we helped along with that. We also went out and did a bake shop initiative where that's distributing information to bake shops, which then they can give to their customers and really spread the message even farther. And we also did signage checks, which were along the Lake Superior Lakeshore as well as at inland lakes throughout the county. And that kind of just shows that other people going to inland lakes are getting the message across as well. And that's a more passive way of outreach.
Anything to chime in with there? Yes, Seth nailed it. So
I was going to ask you too, what have you enjoyed the most? And I'm not going to ask what you've enjoyed the least, but just what have you enjoyed the most?
I really enjoyed the monitoring days, going out and snorkeling the different lakes and trying to find anything that's not supposed to be there. That's been fun. Awesome.
Yeah, field days are important as well as fun. They're actually out there doing the work rather than punching in data. So.
Yeah. Well, I second Scott's appreciation for all of your work this summer. You both have done an incredible job, and if we could have summer staff like this every year, it would be amazing. We spent a lot more time getting the work done and not having to, micromanage or anything like that. So it's been a great summer. So thank you. And does anybody have questions for either of them at all?
Did the anglers cooperate pretty well with you? Or?
Yes, a lot of times you'll stick with that one bad person every couple of weeks, and that kind of is discouraging, but for the most part, there's only been a few times this year where voters haven't even wanted to be contacted. And when they haven't wanted to be contacted, it's usually them walking up saying, you know, I've heard this for the past 10 years. So really they know not to be spreading invasives, and that the message is still getting across, and we are still contacting good amounts of new voters. So
Jerry, thanks for staying away from the landing and not heckling our staff.
It wouldn't be me, but that's.
Well, I take
Thank
from
you,
it,
guys.
I think the work ethics has improved since you went to college there, huh?
Well, heck yeah. I mean, I was a rebel rouser. Look at me.
Hey Scott, have you had any issues with the wash station on Second Landing since you guys got it back up and running?
No, for the most part, that's been, people are using it, quite a bit more, maybe not as much as I would like to see, but they are using it. And yeah, that's, both sides of it, both hoses are up and running, just fine. Yeah, and then we're also, another project that I didn't mention there, we're also installing, what we call cleaning stations, AIS cleaning stations, right at, like the Second Landing, boat wash stations. We have, like grabber tools, so folks can reach under their trailer and grab applied plants, things of that nature. We also have scrub brushes, so if you have a little bit of like a scum line on the bottom of your boat, you can use that to scrub it off. But yeah, we haven't had issues as far as like vandalism, that kind of stuff. You know, with the boat wash station at Second Landing. And then also I'm working with Ashland County Forestry Department. We're gonna put up a cleaning station at the Anglers All boat landing. And then also the city of Ashland, we're going to put up a cleaning station at the Hot Pond and then Clear Park. So yeah, no issues with vandalism, that kind of stuff. Folks are using it, so yeah, no complaints there at all.
One more thing, I'm working with Scott on setting up meetings for the area lakes. So I'm trying to get Clam Lake involved with Fern Lowers and all the area lakes there to set up a meeting on Saturdays to discuss these invasive species, because a lot of these people don't know anything about it, like especially Clam Lake areas. He's got a seminar going in Butternut Lake, but we're trying to get more of the area lakes. So I'm going to be setting up a meeting for Ashland County at Clam Lake area for a Saturday. Trying to educate a lot more people on areas where people are not committed about this situation.
Thank you for your leadership there, John. That's appreciated.
Yeah, sure.
Any questions for Scotty? If not, somebody else. Yours is pretty much self-explanatory. You want to hit any high spots?
No, they're going, the projects are going well this year. I've got, we have to get done is all, so it's exceptionally well this year. One is a carryover, Alexander Waters, that one isn't quite done yet, but he's made a lot of progress, so I don't have any doubt that was gonna go in. And Jerry, we're gonna be getting yours done this year, I understand?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. Because Jerry's a pretty small project, so that was take all that long. 80, say, here. Yeah, so no, everything's going well. Everybody got any questions on any of the projects?
Thanks, Mike. Gabe, you got anything else you wanna?
Not a lot. As of last Friday, bear trapping is just starting in the cornfield, so Carol, I haven't checked the fields, soon they'll be there. They're eating the green cobs already, so they're pretty hungry. You know, I usually wait till there's kernels on the cobs, but they're already eating the green ones, so We know there's probably gonna be a lot of air damage this year because of the lack of berries in the woods and other food for them to eat.
Is that because the low on the berries and stuff maybe?
Yes, mostly because of the drought conditions, real poor berry crops. I don't know how the acorns, I know there's some acorns around, but they cycle also, so there might be good spots, there might be a lot of bad spots. I don't know if the drought affects those any. But there are gonna be active. They started hitting it harder down in Russ County already a couple weeks ago. They're seeing the spike on damage already this year compared to normal years. Like they spiked up here, we're gonna have a lot of them with air problems. And, although with the trap situation, if you get all those monitors of the traps and out there, they should be able to take care of a lot more people that way. Much easier for the farmers to enroll in the program and they don't have to do the daily trap checking. Other than that, running the no-till planter yet, planted been over 100 acres already. It's been sitting still for about the last 2 months. And so we're waiting. I already have a couple people asking to use it later on when it starts raining. They want to use it this fall, and we normally have 3 or 4 people using it in the fall anyway. So last year, I was surprised that we had well over 100, 150 acres planted in the fall season. That was pretty good. Else, well, I'm redoing submitting the second quarter reimbursement request now for all the counties, and being I'm leaving now, there'll be at least a half of the third quarter to do reimbursements for. So with that being said, I think I'll come back in a couple months and try to take care of that as long as it's kosher with the DNR. And, it's first counties to get their reimbursements. Otherwise, Wildlife Services will take over on all their part. They do all their own reimbursements for their program part. Well, they're going to take over these, so there'll be a lot of duplication and splitting the third quarter and stuff. Other than that, it's about it for me. Anybody got a question?
Hey, one more question. Like when the bear hunters have problems, the bear dog people, that doesn't have anything to do with you. That goes through the game wardens.
Yeah.
Would have to take care of situations. You don't have anything to do with any troubles at all then.
Not with for bear dogs. Now all the people that participate in the program have to open up their land to public hunting for that species. So it would be for bear, and participants do not have to allow dogs or anything. They can require no dogs on their property, but they have to open up the public hunting. X number of participants, hunters, depending on the huntable land that you have. So they don't have to allow dogs, and we have no dog rules in our program other than that they don't have to be allowed on the property to hunt. There's a lot of other rules too that hunters have to follow, but we have no control on dog hunting or anything other than participants can reject that.
Thank you.
I know you store the no-till right now. Do we have a plan as to where that's gonna go this winter? Where is it gonna be stored?
No, that's yet to be developed, but it can probably stay at my place. I think I'll have room again. And that we haven't decided yet to take over the no-till management yet. continue on with helping with that, while I'm physically capable of working on the planter and whatnot. I'm gonna get hip surgery eventually. So I'll be out of commission for doing any kind of heavy work for a couple months. But small repairs, I probably can still do. But I'll try to coordinate it and whatnot. We really need as a person that would take it over, that can do the best job for coordination, and the best result or person to do it would be a farmer probably, or somebody that's familiar with planting with grain drills and whatnot. So it would, and it's just not somebody that you can get easily, something that most people are not even familiar with. So at the moment, and I gotta still check with the county on billings and stuff like that, but we still can do it once I'm not an employee. By running everything through the county, being an employee, I was able to do all the deposits and billing and stuff. Make sure it's allowable.
There is money in the no-till budget to pay for maintenance and storage. That it has a budget that includes, that's what the revenue pays for, is to pay for contracting with someone to provide repairs. It pays for the actual parts for repair and then for storage. And we've actually been contracting with Dave for years on that. So if he's still able and willing to do that, that is an option for us, but it also is part of the job description for the new hire. So, once again, we're just gonna have to kind of see how it goes. This is new waters that we're moving into.
Yeah, the funding is on a revolving account, so we don't lose the money at the end of the year that we've gained. And we have carryover every year, so we're able to work with that for expenses and pay for my help, with running the program and repairs. So it is a revolving account.
And if Dave's not able to do it in the future, then, perhaps there's another farmer in the county. I haven't really started reaching out yet. Dave and I talked about this, and I asked about whether Lulich has that service, and he thought they would, but it'd be a lot more expensive. We'd be paying at a premium rate to get work done there. So it's just something that we're gonna have to kind of figure out in the next couple months here. But we'll utilize Dave's expertise as long as we can.
Now you wore more than one hat, right?
Yes.
Any questions, comments for Dave? Mary Jo, you got anything else you'd like to share with us?
And then I was gonna give Josh an opportunity too, if he has
I'll get him after you.
anything to add. I highlighted a few things there on my report. I mean, I discussed most of this stuff. Under education and outreach, I do coordinate, I'm our chairperson for the Northwest Lakes Conference. So this conference has been going on in northern Wisconsin for, I think, 23 or 26 years. So I've served as the chair the last couple years, so I coordinate all of our monthly meetings. And then that conference was held virtually online this year on June 18th. We had 13 presentations. We had a wonderful keynote on climate change. That was Kathy Techman, who works for the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And we had about 150 attendees, which was wonderful. We typically have around 200 people that attend when we have it in person. In both 2020 and 2021, the conference was online, and we're hoping that in 22 it can be back in person again. And it usually takes place either in Hayward or Spooner at one of the schools. It rotates back and forth. And that conference hosts a number of topics related to water science, water ecology, water law, invasive species, and challenging lake issues. And then under grant administration, we basically talked about all of those things that are highlighted. And then on the back side, I did work with DACYAP, the Department of Ag, to get a cooperator agreement for this year, a $25,000 agreement, and that will be to try to increase our farmland preservation agreements in Ashland County. Right now we have 4 agreements, and we're hoping to increase that by another half dozen or up to 10 if possible. These would be 15-year agreements. And then we do have funding available for farmers that develop an agreement. They can receive a $2,000 incentive payment. It does take quite a bit of time to develop those agreements. So the incentive payment would cover their time, and then they would be eligible for tax incentives. And there is a bill at the state right now to try to increase those tax incentives. So right now, any farmer that has a farmland preservation agreement, they receive a $5 per acre tax benefit. And the bill that was proposed in 2019 is to increase that to $10 an acre. So I haven't heard recently if that has been brought back to the legislature. It ended last year. It was voted on and went through either the House or the Senate or the Assembly, and then it died when COVID-19 happened. So hopefully that'll come back. And then following along with nutrient management, I'm working with DACYAP right now to bring someone up that works on our SNAP Plus programs so that we can have a couple of nutrient management update classes on August 23rd and 24th. So I am working with a number of farmers right now that will come into the office and make individual appointments to update their nutrient management plans. There's been a number of meetings, partnership meetings, and trainings that are listed there, and most of that is all still online. So we're still doing quite a bit of virtual work. We are hoping to have a statewide land conservation meeting down in Stevens Point in October. And at this point, they're tentatively, the Wisconsin Land Conservation Association is tentatively planning to have that in person. But we'll see what happens this fall. And other than that, I think I gave you lots of other updates today. So if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments? Is there going to be anything at the Ashland County Fair with either through NRCS or Fire Conservation, or does anybody have time for it, or is no skill plan going to be there? Just curious.
We have not discussed that. I know in the past, like when I worked for Iron County, we used to attend the fair and had very, very little interaction. So it really wasn't worth my time to be at the fair because there wasn't a lot of people that would come into the vendor area. But it's something that we could consider. We try to, like, one of the best places that we've ever had a lot of interaction has always been at the Ashland Dairy Breakfast, where we speak to a lot of people. So we try not to attend events where we're only talking to 1 or 2 people. We try to figure out places that we can go where we have the most.
Yeah, if I remember right too, the last time I think you were out in Ringo that I was aware of, they got the park way out in the middle of nowhere. You have to go out of your way to find you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's been about 8 or 10 years since we've been there, and there was so little interest. And like you said, Jerry, we're out of nowhere where you didn't have any traffic. So we abandoned that idea.
One of the things that I would like to do though, once we hire this ag technician, is to think about having some demo days where we work with a farmer to do some sort of demonstration, whether it's using the no-till drill or whether it's doing some sort of cover crop demonstration, and then we would promote that to the farmers. And I think those types of educational events provide better outreach and more interaction than us just setting a booth up somewhere.
Yeah. We've always participated in the dairy breakfast in the spring until this past year we didn't have it. But that always was quite a few contacts were made there, although the traffic has been going downhill there also for years. But yeah, that would probably have been the most contact we were able to get with the people for any one day.
You, when you do all your events, do you try to publicize it, put it in the papers for the results so that the public people know kind of what's going on?
Well, it depends on what we are presenting at. So for example, like the interns and I attended our Lake Superior Day event, which was on July 18th, I think. And that event was hosted through the city of Ashland, and they asked me to be a vendor. So I was there present and I would talk to people, but I didn't promote the event myself because I wasn't hosting it. Or like the dairy days, we are not putting articles in the paper that we will be present at dairy days because that event is publicized in itself. So an event that we host ourselves would be like our tree and shrub sale. So we put lots of ads in the paper and notices that we have a tree and shrub program going on during the year. And then our pickup day would be on a certain day in May. So we are advertising for an event that we are exclusively in charge of, but we're not putting notices in the paper for events that we have been asked to be at or that we're one attendee.
What about like a lot of the work that you do that we're talking about, the rivers and streams and
yeah.
Do the people know anything?
No. And I have asked to submit articles to the newspaper and I've been told it's not newsworthy. They want, devastating impacts. They want topics that society thrives on. And good news is not always, yeah. So it's been very hard for me. I've asked Rick Olivo, I've invited him out on our project tours in the past. I've asked him to write an article about certain projects that we're working on. And I have not been successful because I've been told it's not newsworthy.
That's kind of like a shame because, half the people in Ashley County don't know what's even going on.
Yeah.
And we're working so hard on these projects that it's a shame.
And I don't know how to
people don't
change
know
that.
what we're doing.
Yeah. So we do have a Facebook page that Scott started for us last year. And we've tried to share that page with like as many people that I know. We've tried to share it amongst our staff. And so that's a new thing for us to get the word out. I do write an annual report every year that I send to every single county board member to let them know about some of our work. We have articles in the paper related to our tree and shrub program. We did have an article on the front page of the paper. I think it was in 2019 or 2020 about the flood grant that we got. So there was that one article. And I do try to reach out to the paper each year to encourage, but we definitely don't have as much coverage as we would like, but we try.
Like the budget and everything is such an important thing that no one knows anything about So.
And it's probably not just our department, John. It's probably every single department. You know, the good work that they're doing is not always highlighted.
I just getting such a bad feedback from the public people about they don't know anything that's going on. So where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
If they don't know and we don't want to publish it, so.
We can send them to our county website.
You gotta remember, all of our meetings are open to the public.
Yeah.
Anybody, you know, in the 30 years I've been here, you had a dozen people, and it's only when there's an issue,
Right.
you know, the mining issue, that, then you get a whole room full of people. But other than that, I'd have to say 95% of all the meetings were unattended by public. They know it's published, you know, the schedules are published and everything else.
So we can send them to the county website. The Land Conservation Department has a page, and we put a lot of the things on there about all of our programs. Our invasive species program, our technical, the conservation projects that we do, our annual report is always posted on there. Our tree and shrub program. So we can send people to the website. You can also, you know, highlight a couple things from our staff reports that stand out to you, and you can share that information at your town board meetings. If people are on Facebook, they can find us at Ashland County Land Conservation Department, and they can see some of the recent events that we've done. So those are just a few ways, you know, to help educate people, but people receive information in all sorts of different ways. Some of it is word of mouth.
We'll just have to leave it at that, that they just trust us so much that we're doing such a good job that they're confident in it, so they're not bitching.
So if we have an opportunity where people are saying like, you know, I don't hear about anything that's happening, part of that is our job too, to share. Well, here's 3 things that the Land Conservation Department just did. Or here's 3 new grants that they have. So it's our role too to try and provide that education. And so we need to keep some of this work fresh in our mind so that we have an opportunity to share education, or to ask them, are you on Facebook? Go find the Land Conservation Department and follow them or join.
That would be a good idea to at least people know where to look.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, otherwise they don't know what they even look for.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you ever work with the county extension agent? Or
Yes.
Programs?
Yes, we have done some partnerships with Lissa Radke. She works for Extension. So some of the stormwater work that we've done in the past on the overflow challenges with the city, I help coordinate our public hearings or public information sessions in the past. So we don't work with them all the time, but there are definitely certain projects that we coordinate on. And I meet with Extension once or twice a year to talk about what grants do I have and what are their interests and where are the places that we can coordinate efforts.
Like if you wanted to have a demonstration on that no-till drill, I would think the county extension, like the guy up in Washington, what's his name?
Yeah, Jason Fishbach.
He's had some demonstration and little meetings, and you get some farmers there.
Yeah.
So
it's a great idea. Yes.
George, can I have a shot?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we spent a couple of meetings trying to figure out a newspaper of record. I'm not sure if we even finished that topic yet, but I've always wanted to see in the newspapers, I don't know what you'd call it, like the county corner or some little spot reserved maybe, and the department heads could write something and then they'd put it in there. The county news is rather light, but I agree with this. What I think the sentiment in this room is that we should have, the paper should be interested in what's going on in, you know, at least at times in these departments, and we should have a venue in that paper to publish stuff that we think is important. We shouldn't have to fight a reporter to have a value discussion over it. You know, we should just have a little spot. I mean, Mary Jo Bailey would write on a particular issue. I know John Bertel used to write about recipes and stuff. Why can't the county have a little spot reserved like that? And then Mary Jo could put particular things, or the zoning could put particular things that maybe aren't, you know, the usual stuff, but are deemed important by somebody. Thank you.
Anything else? Any comments, questions for Mary Jo? Mary Jo, you got anything else you want to share? We'll go to other business. I see Josh, you have something you would like to share with us?
I just have one thing. I got a rather large wetland violation, Tonaway River, south of Sailor Road. Mary Jo will probably be coming on work for that. I referred to the DNR also, and the DNR just does nothing anymore with violations, whether it's ripping vegetation on the lake beds or filling wetlands and putting roads in. So given them about 7 weeks so far. They don't even respond to emails. So, but yeah, that's kind of our biggest violation right now as far as wetlands goes. And that's kind of the kick in the teeth with the work and the grants of kind of restore wetlands. And we've got people filling wetlands, you know. That's a pretty big complex off the Sailor Road. You know, it goes down to 112. It's, you know, right by Highway 13 too. So.
Do you know if they are interested in restoration at all?
Lucky I didn't get a bullet link in front of me, so there'd be 0 on that.
Okay.
He was not kind. He said he'd see us in court for anything they choose to do. So, unfortunately, it would be a setup as, I mean, he went through and filled wetland. He's got a 3-foot road bed in there now. I mean, he could do a lot of restoration work and actually hold a lot of water in that area, you know, based on the work he did. He did dig ponds, and I know the DNR, even though he destroyed wetlands, the fact that he had the ponds is probably what the DNR would touch with him with care. So it's hard on a county standpoint to do any enforcement or compliance stuff when, you know, you've got your, you know, enforcement arm of the government, the DNR, from the state, not taking any interest in these things.
Anything else?
One thing, if anybody could ask, like when we have such a drought now, the low water, does that increase things to the rivers? Can anybody answer that one?
Say that again, John?
When you get low water, I'm sure there's things that happen because the water level isn't high. So is there a concern when the water is low? You get more invasive species, you get more troubles when low waters?
So some lake levels are affected by changes in water level, and it's not always just invasive species, but there's a native plant called water shield, and it's like a small lily, and that grows in a certain depth of water. So if you have a lake where the lake level can drop, that plant could grow excessively one year, and it's not an invasive, but it may cause challenges with navigation. Cattails are very elevation level specific. So if the water was very deep, there may not have been cattails in the past, and if we have a drought and water levels drop, then cattail growth might become excessive. Pigeon Lake in Bayfield County is flooded, and it's been flooded for 5 years now. And the county has spent millions and millions of dollars on rebuilding the road. But in 2006, that lake, part of it dried up. And the landowners there were wanting to not have to pay lakefront property taxes because they had no water in their part of the lake anymore. So 15 years ago, that lake dried up because we were in a drought. Now it's excessive flooding. So to answer your question, water levels can be affected, but it depends on a lot of different factors. What type of lake or water body is it? Does it have an inlet coming in and an outlet? So lakes that are a drained lake that have an inlet and an outlet, that water passes through. They are not affected as much by increased or decreased precipitation because it's just constant movement, versus a lake that is just a bowl, has no inlet, no outlet. If we don't get rain, that lake level is going to drop. And if we get lots and lots of rain, like Pigeon Lake, the lake level comes up and it's flooded. So yeah, there's all sorts of different things that can be affected by the natural ecosystem and our weather conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other business? Mary Jo, you got any other business?
Nope.
Next meeting date? You wanna meet?
First I wanted to ask, does this time of day work well for people?
Works perfect.
Do we keep it going at this time of day?
Well, you wanna start meeting at 7? No, okay.
I just want to make sure it works. When I worked for Iron County, we met at night. So there was lots of people that were working and meeting during the day didn't work, so we had evening meetings. And I'm not proposing evening meetings, but I'm just asking if this works for most efficiently for people.
We had that discussion through the board, and a lot of member people were saying, such as me, I have to drive an hour to get here. And I didn't want to drive back home at that time of the night and stuff, so that was the issue of trying to keep it at this time.
Sure.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Okay. Yep, I'm just asking out of respect, so.
Thank you.
I would propose meeting in early November. Our next, we don't really have any other major business this fall. So if you want to, then if we met this same time, it would be November 9th, but that would be the second Tuesday.
Do we want to meet once this year yet or twice? If you're gonna meet once, November would probably be all right. Otherwise, maybe later October and then December. Late October, middle of December would be my suggestion. Unless you only want to meet one more time this year, because otherwise there would be no reason to, that would be way too close to Christmas time and the end of the year.
Are people interested in a project tour? We did not do a project tour last year. I did offer one in 2019, but if you wanted to do a project tour, that's something that we could do in October. Otherwise, at this point, we would not have probably any action items to take on in October. There's no new grants coming up. There's nothing with wildlife damage.
Well, my thought is if we meet in November, then we're meeting in January, and if we meet in October and December, we could jump it to February because the snow and the cold and everything else. If it ain't pressing, I would rather meet twice this year and then jump to February. Otherwise, if you go to November and you go to February, March, I think that's way too long.
Sure. We could do October 5th. It's a Tuesday.
County board meets on October 5th.
Okay.
October 5th is county board meeting? That budget meeting? Or November will be the budget meeting?
You will approve the budget on November 9th. October 5th, you'll get the proposed budget from the finance committee for the full county to review and give suggestions back to the finance committee so they can make recommendation changes before the public hearing on November 9th.
How about the 12th?
Yep, that'd be the next one. October 12th, Tuesday.
Anything else? Meeting adjourned.
I move to adjourn.
Nothing else on the